You know that voice, right? The one that's always in the background, keeping a running commentary on everything you do, tallying up every little mistake and flaw. But what if that voice, what if it isn't actually telling you the truth? In this explainer, we're going to dig into where that voice even comes from, and more importantly, how we can start a totally new kind of conversation with ourselves. So let's get into it.
Yeah, this is a big one. It's so powerful, and it feels like an almost universal experience. It's that little whisper of doubt right when you're about to take a leap of faith, or it's the voice that screams at you after you've messed up. It feels so personal, like it's the truest thing about you.
But hang on a second. Here's a question. What if that voice isn't the truth? What if it's not even really you? What if it's just something you learned a long time ago? That's what we're going to explore here. This idea of reframing that inner critic, not as your enemy, but as something else entirely.
Okay, so let's get a little more familiar with this critic. Its script is usually pretty predictable, but wow, that doesn't make it any less painful, does it? It really specializes in these harsh black and white statements that just don't leave any room for kindness.
Sound familiar? This is like the anthem for perfectionism. It's that feeling that no matter how hard you work, the outcome is just destined to be flawed. Living under that kind of pressure is exhausting. It turns every single task into this high-stakes test that you're pretty sure you're going to fail.
Ugh, and then there's the comparison game. The critic absolutely loves to hold up this distorted mirror, right? It shows you everyone else's highlight reel right next to your behind-the-scenes chaos. And that just fuels that horrible sinking feeling of being perpetually behind, of just never being good enough.
Oh, this one. This is the social anxiety specialist. It just replays conversations over and over, making you cringe at every little thing you think you did wrong. It's that voice of shame that makes you just want to hide, completely convinced you've made a fool of yourself. These phrases, they're the weapons our inner critic uses.
So, we've heard what the critic says, but where in the world does this voice even come from? Well, this is where things get really interesting. Because if we want to change the conversation, we have to understand why it started in the first place. And it turns out it was created for a reason.
This right here, this is the core logic. It's a preemptive strike. The thinking basically goes like this. If I'm the harshest critic of myself, then when someone else criticizes me, it won't be a surprise. It won't hurt as bad. Now, it's a deeply flawed strategy for sure, but it's also a totally understandable way we learn to protect ourselves when we're young. So what's really important to see here is that this is a learned response. It usually starts with that fundamental human fear of being rejected or left out. And to avoid that pain, we start absorbing the judgments and standards of the people around us, our parents, teachers, our friends. And slowly, their voices become our own inner voice. The critic is born, not as a reflection of who we are, but as a survival tool we just kind of picked up along the way.
Okay, so if the critic is a learned response, well, the good news is that we can learn a new one. This is where the amazing work of psychologist Kristen Neff comes in, and the whole practice of self-compassion. It's not about trying to destroy the critic, but about cultivating a different and honestly, a much more powerful voice inside you.
I mean, it's such a simple idea, but it's so profound. Just think about it for a second. When a good friend of yours is struggling, you wouldn't kick them when they're down, right? Of course not. You'd offer warmth and understanding and support. Self-compassion is simply learning how to turn that exact same kindness inward.
Now, Neff breaks this down into 3 core parts that you can actually practice and get better at. First is self-kindness, which is actively being gentle and understanding with yourself instead of critical. Then there's common humanity, and that's just recognizing that struggling and being imperfect is part of being human. You're not alone in this. And finally, there's mindfulness, which is about noticing your painful thoughts without getting swept away by them.
You know, it's really important to make this distinction clear. A lot of people worry that self-compassion is just a fancy word for self-pity or for making excuses, but it's actually the complete opposite. Self-pity keeps you stuck, just wallowing in your problems. Self-compassion is a tool for resilience. It actually gives you the emotional safety you need to look at your mistakes, learn from them, and then move forward. This practice of self-compassion actually lays the groundwork for another really powerful idea called reparenting. And it's pretty much what it sounds like. It's about consciously giving yourself the things that you might not have gotten consistently when you were growing up.
Have you ever noticed how, when you get really triggered by something, you can suddenly feel like a little kid again? Like totally overwhelmed or helpless or panicked? That's often because the situation is poking at a really old, unmet need from your childhood.
a need for safety, or a need to be seen and validated, or just a need for reliable, consistent care. This is the heart of it, right here. Reparenting is not about blaming your past. It's about taking full responsibility for your own emotional health right here in the present. So when that triggered younger part of you shows up, the compassionate adult in you can finally step in and provide the safety and validation it's been crying out for all this time.
Okay, so this all sounds great, but how do we actually put it into practice? Because talking about it is one thing, but building that new pathway in your brain requires action. There's this simple but incredibly powerful journaling exercise that is a fantastic way to start building that self-compassion muscle.
Here's how it works. First, just get a journal and write down the exact sentence your inner critic is saying to you, like word for word. You'll never get this right. Then, for the second step, you consciously shift perspectives. You write a response to that critic as if you were a compassionate, protective adult. And that response should be warm, acknowledging the fear that's behind the criticism. It should be firm, setting a boundary with that harshness. And it needs to be real, grounded in reality, not some kind of toxic positivity.
So let's end with this one thought. This might just be the ultimate self-compassion shortcut. The next time that critic starts getting really loud, just pause and ask yourself this one simple question. The answer you would give your friend, that's the voice you deserve to hear too. And that's the voice you can start building for yourself, starting right now.